Hello everyone, my name is Zofia GRÓDEK-SZOSTAK. I work in Department of Economics and Enterprise Organization, Krakow University of Economics, Poland. The subject of my virtual presentation is assessment of project finance from structural funds in sustainable development perspective. Sustainable development was first recognized by the international community over 30 years ago. Many global, international, national, regional and local institutions and organizations have included the idea of sustainable development in their foundational legal norms and have developed numerous programs to implement it. Despite the passage of time, the process of implementing the principles of sustainable economic development continues. Although noticed many years ago, the issues relating to climate change, circular economy, sustainable production and consumption are still valid. Sustainable development should be seen through the perspective of the relationships between the economy, environment and society. Sustainable development is a three-dimensional ecological, social and economic perspective on management processes. Its aim is also to preserve the environment of the biological and social development of mankind. Already in 2002, the Johannesburg Declaration drew attention to the integration of three interdependent pillars of sustainable development. For example, economic development, social development, and environmental protection. The theory of sustainable development adapts economic, social, and economical and environmental goals. For example, an increase in per capita income, improvement of human health, and access to environmental resources. The warnings formulated 20 years period of the Rome Report announced a realistic perspective of a breakdown in development in the 21st century. Uninterrupted economic growth risk could reach the limits of its development, for example, the depletion of clean air and water resources. Man requires water, air and space resources as well as ensuring the health safety of the population, as evidenced by the threat brought about the COVID pandemic. In next context, sustainable development requires verification of previously defined environmental threats and goals, which should not be limited only to the issues of climate change and preservation of resources. During the 17th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York in 2015, the 2013 Agenda of Sustainable Development was adopted, indicating 17 updated Sustainable Development Goals. The concept of sustainable development should be focused primarily on the save of human life, which requires, for example, access to clean water resources. The global water deficit poses both a civilizational threat and a technical and organizational challenge to protect water resources and acquire new owners, as well as to implement the treatment technologies. These activities require significant financial resources and national or international project support. The European Union's role in project financing. In a preamble to the Treaty of European Union, the signatories expressed their will to promote economic and social progress for their peoples, taking into account the principle of sustainable development and within the context of the accomplishment of the internal market and of reinforced cohesion and environmental protection, and to implemented policies ensuring that advance in economic integration are accompanied by parallel process in other fields. Sustainable development has become one of EU's priorities, as stated in Article 2 of the Treaty. One of its objectives is to promote scientific and technological advance, a higher level of employment, and to bring about sustainable development. In this way, the European Union has accepted the demands of citizens and environmental NGOs to make sustainable development the primary goal of integration, which is incorporated into its policy strategies and programs. In 2000, in Lisbon, the Council of Europe adopted a development strategy. Its aim was to become the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in a world capable of sustainable economic growth, with more and better jobs and greater social cohesion. Then the Lisbon strategy was supplemented with an environmental dimension stressing the economic growth, social cohesion and environmental protection are inseparable. The next step in implementing the concept of sustainable development was the statement of the European Commission titled Sustainable Europe for a Better World, European Union Strategy for Sustainable Development, prepared of the meeting of the Council of the European Union in Göteborg. It presents the strategy for the sustainable development of the member states, set goals and ways to achieve them, and defines a system for monitoring progress in the area. A number of recommendations were also indicated for the development of similar strategies in a member states, along with forms of support for the implementation of sustainable development. In 2001, the EU launched a 6 action program for 2001 to 2010, which identified 4 key areas for intermediate action: climate change, environmental and biodiversity protection, health and quality of life, natural resource management and waste management. EU strategy for sustainable development is based on a principle of subsidiarity. It means that funds can be used when they provide added value supporting the product and process of the member state. The economic sustainable development instruments of the European Union are supportive. For example, the research of the development of clean technologies, product improvement, training and education, though prevention stimulating activities, and financial, the system of support provided by EU's cohesion and operational programs for projects meeting the requirements of sustainable development. Horizontal policies are priorities directions of the social and economic development of the European Union. Each project to be financed with the participation of EU funds is assessed in terms of compliance with their 3 basic policies: sustainable development, equal opportunities, and information society. According to the principles of sustainable development, when using natural resources, one should not only take into account their current needs, but also the condition of the environment for future generation. EU's sustainable development policy in a respect focus, for example, on the following elements: building a competitive economy using resources rationally and economically, protecting the environment by reducing greenhouse gas emission, creating and disseminating new environmentally friendly technologies, supporting the development of entrepreneurship, especially micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, shaping consumer awareness in making the right choice. Pursuant to Article 8 of the General Regulation, project under operational programs should promote environmental protection requirements, for example, effective and rational management of resources, adaptation to climate change and mitigation of its effect, protection of biodiversity, as well as accelerating the process of restoring the environment wherever a natural balance was disturbed. Financial resources from EU funds should be allocated in accordance with the principles of the Sustainable Development Policy, and the applicant must determine whether their project will affect them positively, neutrally, or negatively. A project inconsistent with horizontal policies is included from EU funding. The choice of one of the above options requires an appropriate justification from the applicant. It must consistently clearly describe how the project, both in the implementation phase and after its completion, will positively impact the environment or be neutral toward it. The application should be supplemented by an environmental impact assessment report and a justification presenting its most important results from the sustainable development perspective. The justification is important because the positive environmental impact of the project scores additional points in a substantive assessment. Both then environmental protection is a direct goal or an indirect one. EU co-financed projects should comply with the equal opportunity policy. At each stage of project implementation, equal treatment of men and women should be ensured, as well as avoiding discrimination on other grounds. For example, age, beliefs, origin, religion, or physical ability. No additional discriminatory criteria should be used in the project. The project's positive, negative, or neutral impact of the equality policy is assessed. The justification should present how the project owner will ensure equal treatment of women and men, for example, in access to education, on the labor market, and work-life balance. In 2018 to 2019, over research was carried out among a Polish beneficiary structural funds, the overarching goal of which was to obtain source information on the implementation of sustainable development policy by the beneficiaries of the operational programs of the 2014 to 2020 financial perspective. In selecting the research sample with the stratification of the studied enterprises into specific groups, a random layers selected was applied. The research used a triangulation of research techniques, computer assisted questionnaire, individual in-depth interview, and participant observation. Based on this section of the Polish Classification of Business Activities, PKD 2007, the selection of the research samples was differentiated by section C, F, G, H, P, Q. When studying awareness of entrepreneurs who are beneficiaries of operational programs, attention was paid to their previous familiarity with the Sustainable Development Policy, SDP, as opposed to its acquisition only at the stage of applying for public support. Entrepreneurs were also asked whether they would implement the SDP in their activities irrespective of the result of the competition under they applied. In the group of survived entrepreneurs, 59% found out about the Sustainable Development Regulations only after regarding the application documentation. Please note that 55% of the respondents declared that they would implement the SDP in their activities, regardless of the result of the competition. Moreover, 62% are already implementing it, and 40% already have implemented the Sustainable Development Policy provisions in their development strategy. When asked about the complexity of the required sustainable development policy, information included in the application, as many as 75% of the respondents stated that the required sustainable development policy description was an extensive burden. 77% of respondents saw measurable benefits from implementing the sustainable development policy. When assessing the benefits of implementing sustainable development policy in the project, attention should be paid to the profile and character of the business. Entrepreneurs operating in a field of engineering and related technical consultancy were most affected by the decrease in cost resulting from the implementation of the SDP. The idea of sustainable development requires changes in the way supply chains are built, how products are designed and manufactured, how services are delivered, how business model and strategies were created and implemented, and how financial indicators are developed to measure success. Own research has shown that applying the principles of sustainable development in practice can be effective regardless of the formal and substantive criteria required when applying for European fundings. As demonstrated by the research, each of the surveyed entities pointed to the benefits of implementing the sustainable development policy regardless of the profile and type of activity. The use of improvement enabling solutions in sustainable development and corporate social responsibility can contribute to achieving a competitive advantage. The requirement to implement the sustainable development policy required applicants and project owners to demonstrate a high level of meticulousness and seek new information to compare and select the most effective possibilities for the implementation of horizontal principles. Therefore, a search for information in publicly available sources such as the Internet was also necessary. The vast majority of the provisions enforcing the implementation of horizontal policies were assessed as transparent, especially when the project objectives were directly related to the horizontal perspectives. This publication was financed by the subsidy granted to Krakow University of Economics. Thank you very much for your attention.